All right, here we go. It says graph the periodic function y equals f of x, or the graph of the periodic function y equals f of x is shown below. And so A here just says, we'll state the fundamental period, meaning how often does it repeat itself and continue on that pattern, and then find its amplitude. So from any point on the graph, let's say right here, um, to find its fundamental period, we find the next corresponding point on that graph. And so here as we go along, there is we can see now when it's been repeated. And that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. Now you don't need to use that point. You can use any corresponding point. So this is the end of the little plateau up here to the next end of the plateau, still 5 units. But from any one point to that same corresponding point on the periodic function. So our fundamental period is 5. Next, find the amplitude. And so we're going to take our maximum value, which is 1. Amplitude is equal to the maximum minus the minimum, which is -1. And we're going to divide that by 2. So we have 1 minus -1 divided by 2. That's 2 divided by 2, which is 1. All right, we have an amplitude of 1. Part B here says find f of 45 and f of 75 and f of 9,341. And we would have to keep on graphing for quite a while just to get to 45, let alone 75, but then 9,341, kind of as you're hopefully predicting, there's a much easier way than just drawing this graph and continuing on and continuing on and continuing on. So let's go through that process right now. If you recall, I'm going to kind of talk about something different for a second, but hopefully it'll make a good connection for you. Think about when we had imaginary numbers. And so I to the first power is I to the second is -1, I to the third is -I, and I to the fourth is 1. And we could use this repeating pattern here to figure out what we would have if we had something like I to the 10th. We would divide it by 4 because there was 4 as our period here, if you will, and we just took the remainder. So divided by 4, which gave us 2 times 4 is 8, leaving us with a remainder of 2. And so then we went to the second part of the cycle. And so I to the 10th really was I to the second, which was -1. If it was I to the 101th power, that was okay. We divided it by 4 because there was 4 pieces in the cycle in the period, and took the remainder. So the remainder was 1. So I to the 101th really was just a funny way of writing I. Okay, so we're gonna have the same concept happening right here. And so hopefully hopefully you remember that process and you remember how really straightforward that was once you got a good grip on it. And so we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take f of 45 and we are going to divide our input by the period. So our input being 45 divided by 5, that's how many units in the period, and we get 9 with a remainder of 0. So what we're really going to do then is we're going to say, hey, that's the function f of x, but we're going to put in the remainder, so 0. That's f of 0. What is our output when we plug in f of 0? Well, our output is 0. So f of 0 equals 0. That means that f of 45 equals 0. All right, let's do that with f of 75. So f of 75, well then I'm going to take the input, 75, divide it by the period, 5, and that time it gives me 15. So there will be 15 cycles, 15 repeations of our fundamental period. We'll have a remainder of 0. And so really if I'm looking for the output, I'm going to put that remainder in there. So that's again f of 0. That means that f of 75 is at that same output. That is also an output of 0. Let's do one more. So our 9,341, f of 9,341. Going to find, first off, how many cycles will that be? And I want to find out my remainder. So 9,341 divided by the period, divided by 5, gives me 1,868. And you can think of it as 0.2, but I'm going to leave it as remainder 1. So there's 1,868 cycles that are going to happen before we get to it, but it continues repeating, very predictable manner. And so this is really going to be f of 1 when I find out its output. And what is f of 1? Well, on this graph, it's 1. So what is f of, I forgot the 1 back here, f of 9,341? Well, it's just 1. All right, hope that helped.